real estate is the best authorized tax scam in America.
Welcome back, investor. We have another episode of the Passive Income Adventures today with Neal Bawa. If you're in the multifamily space at all, I know you have been following Neal and his content, and we were just chatting how people will call us up and they'll say, "Hey, help me get into multifamily so I can have more passive income and spend more time with my family." And we just laugh because being a multifamily general partner is the opposite of passive. And so I want to welcome you onto the show, Neal. Have you introduce yourself? Tell us why the listener should be listening to your thoughts and opinions and your experiences with passive income, the lifestyle that generates, and when to know when we should be working, when we should not be working, like when we should have active income, passive income, the whole gamut. So thanks for coming on the show. I'm looking forward to asking you a lot of selfish questions that I've been wanting to get
Sure,
to know
Emma.
about you.
Thanks for having me on the show. It's nice to see you again. I think people should listen to me because when it comes to multifamily, I think I've made just about every mistake there is. I've bought properties at the wrong time. I've bought properties for the wrong price. I have hired the wrong property managers. I've hired the wrong asset managers. I've done the wrong marketing campaigns. And what happens over time is that as you do these sorts of things and you do more of these sorts of things, you start learning from your experiences and you realize, oh yeah, this is the right profile. That's the wrong profile. This is the price that I should be paying. That's the price that I should be selling at. This is the window. This is what affects me the most. This is what affects me the least. So over a decade of doing this professionally and a decade before that, doing it just to grow my own income. So 2 decades, I think I've made just a colossal amount of mistakes. And my focus going forward is not to repeat those mistakes. So mostly on podcasts, I like to actually share my mistakes. I don't like to share my wins, though they have happened, maybe luckily or just because we're learning more over time. We have about 1,000 investors. We've invested about 325 million of their money into a portfolio that's gone up to $1 billion. Now it's down to about 600 million. And we continue to fight with the challenges of today's marketplace, which are substantial and problematic. And we look forward to 2026 being a bonanza year for real estate. Hopefully is a sort of a answer to your question on why people should be listening to what we're saying.
Yeah, I love that because talking about the mistakes, we learn more from the mistakes. Sadly, like, it's just human nature that our
Yep.
successes, or when we're hearing other people talking about the successes, we get excited, but then we feel like we can't really copy it, we can't really do it. They've struck gold, captured lightning in a bottle, something like that. So talking about what we've learned from our errors, I found sometimes that makes people more nervous because if they hear about the mistakes that you're making, they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna make all the mistakes too." And some people gain confidence from it. So let's start back at the beginning. Tell me your origin story. I always make the comment, origin stories, hard things happen to people, and some turn into supervillains and some turn into superheroes. So tell me about some of your pivot points, your decision making where you got into this career, because it's not exactly what you go to college for, right?
Absolutely. So I'm a technologist, computer science degree, data science is my major. And I was running a technology company starting 1998, grew it from
Mhm.
about 10 employees to when we sold it in 2013, which was 14 years later, at about 400 employees. By that time, it had expanded beyond technology to other verticals as well. I don't like jumping around. So I basically, in the United States, I've only ever worked for one single company, came to the US in 97, went straight to that company. 2 years later was the senior most manager and then ran it for 14 years. And we successfully sold it in 2013. And as I was doing that, this is Silicon Valley. I had the big fat tech salary and the big fat tech tax bill. Eventually, I realized I don't live in California. I actually live in Taxifornia. And as I learned that process, I realized I actually worked for the IRS because there were years in that 99 to 23 timeframe where my tax bill was over 50%, right? Including Obamacare and all the other subsidies, you basically end up putting in 50% of your income when you're earning the big fat tech salary and the big fat tech bonuses. And so I became desperate to try and figure out the legal ways to reduce that tax bill. And of course, real estate was it. In 2003, the founder of the company, the senior partner, decided to build a campus. And he asked me for help and we built it together. So most people, when they start with real estate, they start with a fix and flip or a rental or a private loan. I started with a 30,000 square foot campus from scratch. That was my first real estate investment. So you can imagine it was fire hose, right? So you're running a company that's growing like mad, 30% a year, and you're running it maybe from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then from 6 to midnight, you're building a campus, right? Because that's the only time you have to do all of the work on that campus. And then, so you're in a campus in Fremont, and then you're building another campus 5 miles away. And I learned so much from building that campus. By the time we were done, I had realized the magic of depreciation and the benefits that you receive from being a general partner. And they were incredible. I'd never seen anything like it. And I started making jokes to my friends saying real estate is the best authorized tax scam in America. And I think in a weird sort of way, I know this is a joke, but in a weird sort of way, this is correct because of the magic of depreciation, which is not tied to real estate, that it's an asset. So depreciation is really tied to accounting, and real estate gets the most amount of depreciation of any asset class because of the nature of real estate. And then there's a lot of other benefits that go to general partners. So I realized that and I was like, wow, I'm making more money, but my take home is growing every single year. And as I made investments into real estate, I basically started keeping more and more of my money. And so when 2008 came around, I was ready. And because I'm a data scientist, I started mining data from Zillow and the Bureau of Labor Statistic website and dozens of other websites. And I put them into a statistical analysis software called R, just the letter R.
Mhm.
It's very popular amongst those of us that are in data science, and basically looked at it and started to realize what the data was saying, that this was the greatest time to buy real estate since the Great Depression in the 1920s. And when I would go out and say that to my family members, they would treat me like a complete moron, like an
Yeah.
idiot. They would say, You realize that the home prices are going down every month, you moron. This is the worst time ever to buy. And I'm like, No, you don't realize that buildings that cost $250,000 to make are available for $90,000. There is no mathematics where these buildings eventually will not go back to 250 or more. So as it happens, just anecdotally, those buildings are now worth over $400,000 that I bought them for 90,000. So I realized that my family doesn't want to listen to data science. So I started buying on my own, and my only mistake is I stopped at a dozen and didn't investigate how I could buy more. There's only 10 loans possible, but what I hadn't realized is there's this thing that allows you to wrap those 10 loans into one, and now you've got 9 left and you can start over again. I didn't do that, but those dozen properties basically made my early wealth and got me started into real estate, got me started into data science for real estate. And then I started basically holding meetup groups, and people started coming in and looking at my data. And primarily my data was focused on answering one question. Today, what is the best city in America to invest in? Because I found that there is no answer to that question if you don't put the word today in front of it, because that
Mhm.
changes. Austin
Yeah.
was the best place in America to invest in 5 years ago. Today, some people might think it's the worst. It's certainly not the best. So that changes. It changes over time. And so the question has to have the word today in front of it. And I became obsessed with that. And I've been obsessed with it now for 14 years. Well, actually, it's 15 years with that question. And so I've created courses, created toolkits, created systems, and those have been used by 25 to 50,000 people on the web. There's 14,000 people taking a course that I created on that right now. That's about roughly 14,000 students. And so all of it really was organic, and none of it had anything to do with syndication or taking money from investors, because I was running a technology company until 2013, no investors, no, all of the real estate stuff that I was doing was for myself, for me, and for my friends, all the people in Silicon Valley that work for Apple and Google and other companies that I was friends with that were data scientists. And we were like sharing all this cool stuff and saying, ooh, we know a bunch of things that other people don't. Like, we knew back in that time what were the best cities to invest in. We knew about Phoenix, we knew about Madera, California, we knew about a whole bunch of places, and we invested there. One of my friends invested in Phoenix and he bought 30 properties there, and 80% of his net worth today is those 30 properties. So we were doing this stuff. And then eventually we started looking at it from a deeper perspective. We started looking at multifamily, came across Provo, Utah as one of the most phenomenal places to invest in. And then from there, it snowballed. But until 2013, there weren't any investors involved. So the first decade was all about a discovery of real estate, and my shock at understanding that nobody does data science in real estate, right? Now you can buy data science, really good data science, from a company called CoStar.
Mhm.
But until the only people that were buying it were multifamily syndicators, not average investors, because the minimum cost is $25,000 a year.
Mhm.
And so average investors had no access to data science that was free or cheap. And so it became my mission in life to provide it for free.
Such a great story. I know we spent 20 years in Austin working in the data science industry. I'm not a data scientist, just market for them. And so when we first moved to Salt Lake City, I remember thinking, we're just going where the tech jobs are. My husband's in IT. He was a data science company IT guy, basically a friendly startup IT guy. When I first moved to Salt Lake City, his old boss asked me to start hosting the Pi Data Salt Lake City meetup. So I would go there and there were all of these data scientists around me sitting around talking about Python and R, and I'd be in the back of the room like, I have no idea what they're talking about. I had a hard time being at this event where they're there to talk to other data scientists and talk about data science and shifting the conversation to real estate because I was running it for my friend. And I'm like, oh, these guys would be such great investors, but I don't really know how to talk to them about data science. So therefore, I don't feel like I'm here. I'm like the secretary almost. I thought, okay, maybe I can start some sort of an event or something for data scientists to be able to come in and learn about real estate and invite them to my meetup and to my event. I found that because I wasn't a data scientist, there was a lot of doubt. There was a lot of feeling like, how do I know that the information that you're telling me is even true? And so I feel like, I don't know if you feel like that has given you kind of an edge to be able to appeal to people who are more analytical, more diving into data and making sure that they're making decisions based on facts rather than experience, because you can tell me now that you've been doing it for 20 years, data is no substitute for experience. But at the same time, where do those 2 things cross? Has that been an advantage for you as you did branch out and start raising capital? And what does that look like? Because me, I had to finally abandon it, because it just wasn't a good fit for my skill set and my experience.
I think your aptitude allows you to gather people around you that are similar, right? So you look at
Mhm,
all these young people on the web that are influencers. They're taking things that they care about. Maybe somebody loves cosmetics, and so they basically become a cosmetics influencer. And then the people that are drawn to them are people that are interested in cosmetics. So it's
mhm,
only natural that somebody that is a data scientist is going to pull other people that are geeky and nerdy around them. So yes, my investor database is geeky and nerdy, and they like the fact that we are looking at everything from a lens of data science. But I want to point something out. It's very important. Early on, I had a lot of ego and hubris about my stuff is right because it's based on data science. Actually, it turned
mhm,
out that what was correct was what you just said. Data science is not a substitute for experience, right? So there are other people that didn't use data science that were more experienced than me in multifamily that have done better because they had experience. So I think the best thing to do is the combination of data science and experience. But the problem with experience is you got to spend 10 years getting it. And that's what I've done, right? So the only thing that's really helped me, that's why if you look at the returns numbers on my website, they're really good, is data science sent me to the right place. And those places were booming. So when I made my mistakes, they got covered up. Like some of my
oh,
investors don't even know that I made huge mistakes because the places that I went to were going so gangbusters that I still look like a hero when I should have received a beating from my investors for making those mistakes. But it got covered up. So I think that's how data science helped. But to go back to your original question, yes, people will always gather an ecosystem of like minded folks around them. And I think that's important. And that's where success comes. So if you're hosting a meetup group, what is it that you're truly passionate about? And I think you should host meetup groups about that. Maybe it isn't even real estate. That my point is passion creates energy and
mhm.
energy creates vision. And that vision, if it has enough energy, can be transmitted to all the people in front of you very effectively in that they start having the same belief. And once they start having the same belief, those people want to work together. And that's how we managed to exit 9 projects and create tens of millions of dollars of profit for people at 30+% IRRs, because those people ended up having the same data science vision that I had. And the timing was also good. Is that 30% IRR number going to hold in the next 3 years? Hell no. None of my projects at this point in time are going to hit their projected returns because of what has happened in the last 2 years. And I challenge anyone to tell me that they're going to hit their projected returns if they bought properties in the last 3 or 4 years. It's just not going to happen. But bottom line is, even when I average them out, I'll be in the high 20s. And I think I'm pretty pleased with that, to be honest. I'm chuffed. So I think the moral of the story there is you really got to like what you're doing. It's
Mhm.
very hard to act. Maybe you're a great actor and you can act, but I think the rest of us are not good at acting. But when we get excited about something, it's super easy for that to be transmitted to the people in the audience that are receptive. And there were people that would come to my meetups. Early on, I did meetups. Now, of course, I present at conferences, so I don't do meetups. But I would go out to these meetups and present, and I could see that there were people in the audience that were glassy eyed because they were like, okay, this guy's talking about job growth, income growth, home price growth, population growth. He's talking about crime reduction. I don't care about any of these things. Just give me the list of cities. So they would just sit glassy eyed, pay no attention to the first 40 minutes. And then at the end, I was like, okay, based on all this stuff that I just said, here's a list of cities. And that's all they cared about. And they would write those cities and go away. And we never saw them again. And hopefully they did well with those cities. And I think they did. But they weren't part of our ecosystem. They wouldn't come to invest with us. They were there because they were like, this guy has a list
Mhm,
of cities, and you should go listen to why those cities are good. And so those people never became part of our ecosystem. Hopefully they benefited. And so I think you gather the people that start to believe in what you're talking about. And that's why I think passion is super important in this industry. Also, clarity is important. There's a lot of these people that were like, I'm going to go do this on my own. Neal Bawa is buying a 300 unit building. I'm going to go out and buy a 300 unit building. And my question to them was, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, so Silicon Valley. So I would say, what's your job? Oh, I'm a technologist at so and so company. Okay. How many hours a day do you work? Roughly 11 hours a day, plus we have to work on weekends. And I said, so you want to buy a 300 unit building? That is a full time job, right? That's a 55-hour job. So you're going to take your 55-hour week and add another 55 hours a week. Is there any allowance for sleeping or eating in that list? Or are you just giving up sleeping and eating? So it took a while for people to really understand that being a passive investor with people like you or me is very different from going out there and buying these buildings themselves. Unfortunately, my meetups have had the side effect of a bunch of these people becoming so confident using my data that they would say, oh, this data is bulletproof. I'm just going to go out there and make huge amounts of money. And they went out and bought buildings and massively mismanaged them, in certain cases, money instead of making
mhm.
money. So I don't want to imply that data science is magic. I think data science is a key piece of the process, but experience is experience. There's nothing
Yeah.
else that works for experience. I'm still at 12 years later learning brand new things. I just learned something brand new about marketing to tenants last week that had me really excited. And I this week's obsession is, how do I make sure that what I just learned last week, it gets permeated to all of my properties and becomes part of our process. So even if I die and my wife is running the company, it should still happen automagically, right? So that becomes an obsession. So a lot of people think that it's data science that's the magic to what I do. It's actually process,
Mm,
because data science can tell you something useful, but process is 10 times more important because you create a system, a process, a set of rules that takes that insight, that aha moment, and keeps replicating it over and over again until it becomes part of the DNA of your company, right? Once it becomes part of the DNA, you don't have to worry about it because everyone else is drinking that Kool-Aid and they keep distributing that Kool-Aid to the next person that comes into the door into your company. And so it becomes part of the DNA. It's now self-propagating, right? It's like a virus, a good virus that you have, and that virus is going to spread to every single employee, but it takes a while to get there. And so what I'm good at is creating hundreds or thousands of processes. And I have to say, I've become much more efficient since November 30th, 2022, because now I only do process through ChatGPT. So what I do is I take my phone, I tap on the ChatGPT app. In fact, I use an iPhone. So I've even created a special button on my iPhone for ChatGPT. Do you see that
yeah,
little
I
round
need
thing there?
that.
Right? So
Yeah.
tap that, it goes straight to, sorry, I can't figure out there. That's ChatGPT. So I'm basically on an ongoing basis talking with ChatGPT, sharing my ideas 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 8 minutes. And then I'm saying, okay, fine, structure this. And it structures it. I give it instructions. And then I say convert to Word. And then I basically send that Word document out to my team members. But I never send it to, in the to field, I always put in a project manager. So my project manager is Pakistani. His name's
Mhm,
Mohammed. And I just send it to him. And then I CC everybody else that's actually the people working on this project. So the project manager then creates a Slack channel. He creates all of the tasks using what I've written over 3, 4, 5, 6 pages, what ChatGPT's written, but I've dictated. And then that Slack channel basically takes the project to the end. And the end of the project is, okay, now that we've done this, how do we convert it into DNA?
mm,
That's magic. That's
yes.
process. It sounds very unsexy, but one of my quotes that I like to make, I tell people the least sexy things in life are the most sexy things in life,
Mm,
right? Why? Because they're very unsexy. So most people don't want to do them. And that's where you create an advantage. So if you spend an hour every day just working on systems and processes, in 5 years, you become freaking bulletproof because you've spent 5 years working on
mhm.
things that nobody else likes.
Yeah. Okay. So you're what you're basically describing right now is how to run a business as an entrepreneur. And this is when people don't do well by going into multifamily real estate and thinking to themselves that it's going to be this side hustle, that multifamily is going to be more passive than owning 10 rental houses. And you described the technical term I use for this is slop. Like I picked a good city and I used data to inform my early decisions when I didn't know what I was doing. And there
Mhm.
was a lot of slop there. And so I was able to be successful, even though my operations, my systems and processes might not have been successful in a worse city. And people coming to you, you've gained your notoriety from being the city picker, right? One of the reasons I like listening to your conferences or your podcast is because I do enjoy data science for lay people. I know enough about it from sitting in the back of those rooms. They're going over coding, right? But then afterwards, they've explained to me lay people stars. That's one thing I really enjoy about what you do is you're very good at bringing that data down to the layperson's perspective as a teacher, right? But then you also realize like data is not the new oil. Insight is the new oil. Some
It's insights.
actionable. Yeah.
And then repetition of insights is even the
Okay.
new oil, right? So I tell people, yeah, data's not the new oil. That's a fancy thing that people say. It's the insights from data and then your ability to repeat those insights on an ongoing basis. And that's the new oil.
Yes, how to make iterative decisions on how to take those insights and make them actionable inside your business. You're definitely an entrepreneur. You work a lot of hours a week. You are very dedicated to your craft, to what you're doing. And I think that a lot of people are attracted to the crystal ball nature of the data that I'm going to pick the city and I'm guaranteed to be successful. This is going to make it easy. And I love the message that you're saying is no, you're running a business and you need to get good at running a business. So let's shift gears from there a little bit and talk about the passive investor side of it. So maybe somebody's hearing what you're saying and they're very excited and they're like, all right, I love designing systems and processes. My dad was a process engineer and boy, talk about not sexy. Software developer in the 70s, trying to convince people to do something on a computer when the pencil and paper version works just fine. So very not sexy. But people, some people are very excited by that and they're thinking, I want to go start a business. So let's talk to the passive investor for a few minutes and saying, okay, we convinced you not to start a business. It's really hard. It's not a side hustle. But the taxing that you mentioned, that's what tracks people into this field as a real estate investor. I'm going to save so much money on my taxes. But if they're still a W 2 employee, then they're not going to get the same kind of tax benefits that we are being real estate professionals and being GPs. So let's talk about okay, I don't want to run a business. I just want to invest passively. How do I save money on my taxes in that situation when I still want to just do my 60 hours in tech?
So when I wouldn't 100% agree that the benefits for them are not great. I think they're incredible. It's just the benefit for us as general partners are better. So
Better.
I would say the benefits for anybody who's even a passive investor are incredible. It's just what we have is 2x incredible, right? So Donald Trump, for example, didn't pay taxes for 15 years because he had a building that actually went bad and there was a $1 billion loss. And because he
Yeah.
was a GP, he took $300 million of that loss, even though he'd only invested 10 million. So he lost $10 million, but he got $150 million in losses basically onto his books. By the way, he didn't do anything shady, right? Warren Buffett is well known for saying that he pays less in taxes than his front desk receptionist, and he explains why he less. And he says, "I take those tax benefits because that is the law of the land." Right?
Hmm.
I think the law of the land is wrong and they should be changed, but as long as it stays the law of the land, I'm going to take the same benefits as anybody else. The same thing happens when you're a passive investor, right? You're still getting benefits. You're still getting tax benefits, write-offs on multifamily, but those benefits are on your other passive income. So understand that this is a journey. What I find
Hmm.
is people like to look at the first step of the journey. In life, success is basically based on creating a vision of what things look like 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years down the line. You don't have to create a complete vision, but you have to say, everything that I'm about to do, obviously, I can see the first step because anybody else, the first step is visible. But if I want to be successful in life, not just tied in real estate, but successful in life, I want to get better at creating a vision of the 10th step, the 50th step, and the 100th step. And the people that are actually receiving huge benefits, huge tax benefits in real estate as passive investors are the ones that actually have passive investments from prior projects. And what they're doing is they're taking the tax benefits from the new projects that they have in Neal Bawa, and they're basically getting write-offs on the old passive income. Now, you might say, I don't have passive income when I start, so these are not going to benefit me as much. The answer is it's a buildup. is a process where you climb the first step so you can get to the second, and then you take the second step so you can get to the 10th. And it's as you keep going, your benefits keep increasing. Therefore, your post tax income keeps increasing. And then it starts to do what is known as an exponential curve. An exponential curve is something that starts out really slow. And so you're on the shallow part of the curve and you think you're not going anywhere. But every single person that has been on the sharp part of the curve, they went through the shallow part first. There's no person that just went exponential straight unless they started Facebook. Every other person did shallow steep. And so your income grows over time, not at a straight line, but in an exponential curve. And so it's super important to understand that even if you're somewhat disappointed by the tax benefits when you start out, understand that these benefits aggregate over time, right? And one of the coolest things about some of these tax benefits is that you can roll them over from year to year and take them into the future. And so that's very powerful. Be Create a vision of your future. Don't say, I want tax benefits today. Say, I want tax benefits in 5 years. And that means I'll have so much money in 5 years that when I invest in 10 years, now I'm on that sharp part of the curve and my net worth is just skyrocketing because that's what happens. And it's really important to understand that this is the truth. I can't make you magic tax benefits today, but I think if you create that path, everyone benefits at a much faster rate in the future.
Yes. And here you are talking about process design again. And I could see that underpinning what you're
Everything in my
saying
life is
here.
process design.
Yeah, but the process design takes that vision at the end of knowing, hey, maybe 'cause I have investors call me sometimes. They say, I have $50,000. Maybe they're a tech guy, pharmacist, something like that. I have $50,000 saved up. And they think that I'm going to take that $50,000 and I'm going to turn it into $1 million. I like, this is just not how this works. And that they're never going to pay taxes again because they invested $50,000 in real estate. And those expectations are built up by watching YouTube shorts that say things like, "Oh, I never pay taxes because I'm a real estate investor." And they're not talking about the process behind it like what you're describing. And so this is the purpose of the show is peeling back that hype and that sizzle and saying, "Yes, it's true, but here's the process to get there. This is not magic. This is not a quick fix." And so I want to go back to something that you said
But it's just as powerful as those YouTube shorts say. So the YouTube shorts
over
are
time. Yeah.
wrong in terms of the time frame, but are not wrong in terms of the eventual result. Keep in
Yes.
mind that real estate as an asset class is worth over $326 trillion. That's 3 times the size of the worldwide stock market. So take the entire world stock market, multiply by 3, and you end up with real estate. So in the long term, no asset class has ever created the kind of wealth that real estate creates. In fact, if you take the real estate wealth that's been created since the beginning of time, and then you see every other kind of value that's been created, including gold and diamonds, real estate's still larger. And the reason for that is the tax benefits allow you over time to build your wealth and go vertical. So I don't think that YouTube shorts are wrong. I think that the timing is off and they're doing it just to get clicks. And
Yeah.
what I've found is when I bring in investors and explain to them that it's all about timing, it's about building long term wealth, some of the ones that are tied to instant gratification go away. And I love
Mhm.
the fact that they go away because they're
Yeah.
not the right sort of people for me. And then others who realize that this is a process that they have to go through, now they become good investors.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yes. If they could just say on the YouTube short, "In 5 years, you'll never pay tax," or whatever. And the instant gratification, that's good. It's almost like a filter. But you tell me if this is correct or not. I tell people, especially stock market people who are wondering why I like real estate so much. And I have stock investments too, right? Diversification is important, but they just don't have any real estate at all. They don't think it's important, and they think I'm, like you said, a moron for putting so much emphasis on this. And I say, look, you're going to lose money in real estate probably every 10 years. This is a financial cycle that we're going through. The last one was long, but roughly every 10 years, you're going to lose money in real estate. And I just dollar cost average in and I just say, hey, bam, I got burned. I hit the 10-year mark and I lost money. But I lose money in the stock market a lot more often because it's pretty volatile and it stresses me out. So I just put it in an index fund and I just try and ignore it. Is that true? When you mentioned earlier, if we go back to what you said, like projects bought within the last 2 to 3 years are not going to hit projection. Now, if you're projected 30%, you're going to make 20%. That's great. But what if you projected 15% and they're going to make zero or maybe even lose some money? How are you dealing with that in the investor base right now when they're hearing about all the money people are losing right now?
By being honest and saying that this is part of that 10-year cycle. So, what I tell investors is something similar to what you just said. If people made 30, 40, 50% returns in the last 5 years before the end
Mhm,
of 2022, all I ask is take a simple Excel spreadsheet. Everyone says I'm good at Excel. Everyone. Fine. If you're good at Excel, go in and look at all of the investments that you made in real estate. Now plug in the new ones where you're going to lose a little bit of money or make zero or make five, and plug them in and average them out. Now put that average in. Now go back into E-Trade, open a new tab, go into E-Trade or Robinhood, whatever you use. Now go back and look at your legacy, your investments in the stock market. So I have won a large number of bets on this where people have told me that their stock markets, they made more money in stock markets than they made in real estate. So I said, okay, as long as you're being honest, I'll put a bet in. For every dollar you want to invest, I will invest $10 into the bet. So let's
mhm,
say you want to invest $100. I'll say, okay, if I win, it's 1,000. If you win, it's 100. And so people like 10x bets. So they're like, okay, I'll do it. And I say, okay, so here's what you have to do is you have to meet with me for 15 minutes and I'll create an Excel spreadsheet for you with two tabs, one on the real estate side, one on the stock market side. And you tell me that you hold your hand to your heart and your numbers for both sides are equivalent. So far, I've lost roughly one bet out of 10. So I lose $1,000 to that guy, but I win $900 from the other guys. But I bought aha moments to nine people, while the 10th guy obviously is a rock star at stock market. Fine, good
mhm.
for them. But most people, the most common remark when people actually lost these bets to me was, I thought I was doing better in the stock market. The problem is, almost no one that I know of that invests in the stock market has a truthful opinion of how they did in the stock market. Individual investors make roughly 3% a year, not accounting for inflation, and 1% a year when accounting for inflation in the US stock market. I'll say that again. Individual investors, after accounting for inflation, make 1% a year in the stock market. It's just we are not able to tell ourselves that we are average. We have to be. Any group of 10 has five people above average and five people below average. That's just math. But we are never able to say that we are average or below average. So, on a mental basis, we can't deal with that. It's not something that our ego allows us to deal with. So, what I suggest is for every stock investment you ever made, keep a spreadsheet. It's as simple as when did I start? When did I end? What was the buying price? What was the selling price? What was the average per year? That's just five fields. If you haven't done that, then you're not good at Excel. You might be great at writing Excel formulas, but being good at Excel is actually tracking the things in your life that are important. And what could be more important than your investments, right? I track everything in my life. I track my weight. I track how often I have sex. I track everything in my life that I think is important in Excel. And my Excel spreadsheets are much more mundane than yours might be, but they're very consistent. And that's the
Yes,
difference.
chart of my cycles, because I had done it. I would write it, I print it out and I write it in pencil, then I would go transfer it onto the spreadsheet, and I had a graph where I could move like a flow chart, where I could move the temperatures up and down, and they would be connected with the line, so I could see trend lines, and down below tracking every single day what symptoms I was supposed to be looking for. Am I ovulating? Am I pregnant? All this, and I just wasn't getting pregnant. So I bring this in to my doctor, and she sits down and she starts flipping through my folder. Yeah, everyone was a month page, a year and a half of, and she sets it down. She goes, "I've never seen anything like this, and frankly, I don't really know what to do with it."
Hair are hiding your geek horns. I see them now. They're peeking out from your hair. You've got geek horns, Emma.
It was almost like an art project at that point. It's not a lot of formulas. There were no spreadsheet formulas in that.
Most
Putting the data
spreadsheets
in
are
the
really simple, right? It's
yes.
about mindset and just tracking everything. One of my most complex spreadsheets is this spreadsheet that tracks how I get about 4 million miles a year. Because I travel on business class worldwide. So
Mhm.
I just came back from Bali and Phuket. I don't pay anything or almost don't pay anything. Sometimes there's some surcharges. I travel on the greatest airlines in the world. Emirates and Singapore are my two favorite airlines. My kids travel with me. My adopted daughter travels with me. And even when we have to buy domestic tickets, we use this amazing thing that Chase has, the 1.5 cent thing. If you don't know what that is, get a Chase Sapphire card.
Yep.
So I make 4 million miles a year. This is a very difficult thing to do. And so my virtual assistants do it all, but I track it. And that spreadsheet is ironically the most complex spreadsheet that I've maintained for over a dozen years. And because of that, I travel worldwide and live in amazing hotels, incredible Airbnbs, and pay very little. So I get about $60,000 a year of travel from my 4 million points. And most people are like, how could a spreadsheet like this be so complicated? The answer is you set a big goal. 4 million miles is a huge number. Most people be happy with 200,000 miles a year.
Mhm.
And there's videos on the web about how you get there. I'm not spending $4 million to get to 4 million miles. I'm spending
Yeah.
400,000 or maybe less than that to get to 4 million miles. There's videos on the web about that. And those things were so ironically complicated that this is actually the most complex spreadsheet that I have. Most of my spreadsheets are really simple, but they're really powerful.
Mhm.
Even the stock market spreadsheet, I have learned that I am average at the stock market. I am average. The
I'm
average
below
investor,
average.
right? I am and that was ironically very difficult for me to accept because I was like,
Mhm.
I have all these insights. I invested in Nvidia right after ChatGPT came out,
Yep.
right? And so you might say, "Oh, Neil, you knew about that insight." I said, "ChatGPT is the most significant advance in human history." I started saying that, and then I invested in Nvidia. And then, like an idiot, when Nvidia went up 20%, I sold it. It's now up 400%. I'm an average stock investor because I don't know when to sell. I might have insight. And so most people don't do that. So I challenge you, if you're listening to me, forget about the real estate. The first thing you should do is go back and rank your stock investments over the last 5 years. And I guarantee you're going to have a bunch of aha moments.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Uh, Bright story. My spreadsheet worked. I have 6 children. We did, figure it out. Like spreadsheet power, right? This is and that example in my life and in your life shows that just paying attention and tracking stuff can have real effects in the real world to get you goals that you really want. I want to be wealthy. I want to have a big family. And these things were out of reach for me before when I was just indexing in the stock market and not paying attention to anything. I have to pay a lot more attention to my real estate portfolio. It is more work. But it's 10x more results. So anybody can call me a moron. Look at my net worth over the last since I started doing this. But let's talk about that more work though, because I'm running a lifestyle business here. I basically run a hard money fund. And the reason that I do that instead of a multifamily fund is because as I started to transition out of multifamily for things that were shorter term and the higher cash flow, I love the short term nature of the hard money loans. It's 3, 6, 12 months. I don't have to run anything, right? You vet the deal out and make sure they're doing the construction they said they were going to do. I have partners for that. I absolutely have started to design more of a lifestyle business. I'm not the kind of person who's going to be calling investors on the phone. It's listen to my podcast, reach out if you want to invest with me. If not, like I ain't gonna. So as we're getting to our 50s, our mid 50s, how has your business model and your approach to life changed to your own passive income journey now that you've seen the power of it for your investors? Are you has it changed anything? And what are your long-term plans as far as your own lifestyle journey goes?
I'm going to give you some really terrible answers. So one, one of them is that I'm starting to realize what you realized a while back. So I'm basically coming to the realization that my business actually should be a split between these big 300 unit multifamily buildings and some cash
Mhm,
flow business. So I'm basically now building short term divisions and short term businesses in addition to the long
mhm,
term ones. So that's been a realization, but I feel like I should have known this 5 or 10 years ago, but I did hubris, right? The other thing that I'm thinking about is how do I withdraw from my business without the business's quality being affected? And a lot of people will give you dishonest answers, and I'm going to give you a terrible but honest answer. As my business went up, I started increasing my own salary. Now, most of the money that I make comes from selling buildings, but you still want to give yourself a salary because every CEO book you ever read it says your business should be good enough to make you profits as a investor, as a
mm,
partner in your business, but you should also be able to make your salary. You should not have a zero salary in your
okay,
business. That means that what you're doing is you're cheating. You're saying that somehow I give my time for free and then I make money on the back end when my buildings sell. That's bad. So I realized that I accepted that, even though it was weird for me to accept that because I was like, no, I make all this money on the back end. It's millions of dollars. But then I realized, no, these books are right, that you still have to have a salary. And one of the things that the salaries helps you is signing on loans, right? See, they want W-2
mhm,
income. So what I started doing, I started with 100,000, 200,000, 300, 400, 500. Then I got to the point where, okay, 500 is plenty W-2, and then you pay taxes and easy to get on loans. And now what I'm doing is I'm bringing it down. I'm bringing it down from 500 to 400 to 300. And you'll be like, okay, so where's that money going? It's going into building mid-level management and people in the Philippines. So mid-level management here in the US and people in the Philippines that support that mid-level management. So I'm basically making investment into my retirement where I'm saying maybe in the long term, I'll make 250K instead of 500K. But 80% of the time that I was spending in the business, these people will spend. That 250 that I gave up, it's 2 people here in the US and 4 people in the Philippines. Those
Yeah.
6 people are going to take over 80 to 90% of my job. And so that is the vision that I've created. I'm halfway through that vision and I think I'm doing pretty well. And so my goal is 4 years from now, I will spend 10 hours a week on my business, but my business will be just as efficient as before. The
Mhm.
first part is easy to get to ten hours. I'm wealthy. I can do 0 hours if I like. But the second part is really hard because most of the time, as you back out of your business, the efficiency of your business falls. And what I'm aspiring to do is I want the business to be more efficient. And I think I'm getting there for one simple reason. Most of us, out of ego and hubris, think that we can do it all and no one can do it better than us. What ends up happening actually is most of the time we don't get things done because we don't have the time to start them. We're terrified that if I start something, it's going to take hundreds of hours. So I don't start them. And I don't have this discussion in a very visible way. It's a subconscious discussion in the back of my head. Don't start this stuff, Neil, because you don't have the time. And so what I've actually found is that as I'm reducing my salary and hiring those middle income people, middle management people, maybe they're not as smart as me, maybe they're not as experienced as me, but they have more time. So they're
Mhm.
actually able to do way better on those things that I can. And that's also been a sort of an ego hit for me saying I could have done this 5 years ago and I would have had much less stress. So now
Yeah.
I'm down to about 32 hours a week, roughly. So on Fridays, I work a lot less. And so I start my work day at 8:30 and I finish at 4 on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then Friday, just for a break, I finish at 2. And my goal is let's reduce an hour each year. And then that way I'll end up at 10 hours eventually for those 5 days. So that's a 5 hour reduction each year. And I'll eventually get to 10 hours. Maybe I won't get to 10 hours. There's some indication that my brain actually is not going to 10-hour weeks.
Mhm.
And I might stick at around 20, where it's okay, this is the work life balance that I want. I think retirement is not sexy at all. You just want to have flexibility so that you can not work this week or go on a 4 week vacation or spend a month in Spain. We're off to Spain and Portugal soon. And one of my desires is that when I go on vacation, I want my company to run without stress. I'm not there yet.
If I'm gonna ask anybody, what's your 5-year plan or your 10-year plan? You have a spreadsheet where you've already done it, and you can tell me. Sometimes I ask that question on the show, and people are like, "Well, I'm just so wrapped up in the business today." And having that vision, that long-term plan, and then building the steps to work toward it is really the difference between people are just hustling and the people who are making an exit plan. And people talk about how they don't wanna retire, but I think what I've learned from some of my investors who are in the healthcare profession, they will be working in an emergency room or something, and they'll say things to me like, "Oh, I wanna make enough passive income that I can drop down to." The rest of us don't really think that way because we don't work in healthcare, but it's so common with physicians to be able to say, "I'm gonna go down to 50% or 40%
They don't want to go down
and
to
work
zero. They
part-time."
like what they're
No.
doing, but they hate the fact that they have to work for a living
Yep.
and that they have to sell their time for a living. By the time they're down to 50, their life has improved so much that they don't want to go down further. So this is
Yep.
specifically true of doctors and also nurses to a lesser
Mhm.
extent. And so I love the fact that everyone has their own perfect work number of hours, but I've rarely found that perfect number is 40 hours. I think it's always less than that. So it's
Yeah.
30 or it's 20 or maybe 10 for some people.
Yeah.
And so I'll give you a tip on how everyone can get there. And this tip is very important, right? So a lot of people do vision boards and things like that, right? Which is very useful. I've done them before. They've helped me. But I think what people don't do is once you get to the point where you're like, I want that cutback in the next 5 years, I think you should have a vision board that's specific to retirement, right?
Mm.
And that vision board can't just be what the end result looks like. You have to have a vision board for a year or 2 years or 3 years and 4 years and 5 years. And that 5 years maybe is that final vision that you want to get to. And you really need to think about that every day. So before I start meditation every day, I spend a minute thinking about that.
Mm.
I spend a minute dreaming about it. And my dreams are not factual, meaning they're exaggerated. In my dreams, I'm spending a month watching cricket in India. I'm Indian. I don't have any connections with India except for cricket. I'm a cricket fan. I have these outrageous, grandiose dreams during that time, and I probably won't go spend a month in India watching cricket, but that's what I dream of.
Mhm.
And so you have to attach a lot of dreams and excellent amazing things to that 5-year plan. And that helps you flesh out your 1 year and 2 year and 3 year because it's a grind to go through all the things I need to do now to get that 5-year benefit. And so you have to attach lots and lots of sexy dreams to it.
Yes. And it's I used to work for a British company where it was a sports company, and they'd all be watching cricket, and I'm the only one watching rugby. So I actually do plan, like, my vision board is around rugby matches where I'm gonna go to New Zealand for a month and
New
watch rugby
Zealand,
matches.
the
It
mecca
was
of
funny.
rugby.
Funny that you said that because my vision board helped me to reduce, not eliminate, but reduce the amount of loss that I felt when we left corporate. We hiked the Arizona Trail for 3 months, hiked from Mexico to Utah because I knew I needed time to think, but I knew I couldn't just sit and do nothing to think I had to go accomplish something during that time. So it's really helped me to have these things on there that I want to do in retirement, both business and personal, so that I would spend less time figuring out, like, oh, what do I want to do? It's still a lot. There's still a lot of retooling that you have to do to find your new life after you retire, but I feel like, we can reduce it if we're thoughtful about planning ahead, and I'm a planner. Alright, so I know you need to get going. You just have a few minutes left. I'm really curious about that thing you mentioned, though. Can you give us a little bonus marketing tip on how you're marketing to tenants? First, tell people how they can get a hold of you and why people should reach out to you after the show, and then give us that little bonus tip about your new marketing thing that you're excited about marketing to tenants.
Fairly complicated. I think that what we found was Facebook marketing does not allow apartment marketing. What they do is they ban apartment marketing. If
Okay.
you have an individual unit, like you have 1 unit or 2 units or 3 units, that's what Facebook
Mhm.
Marketplace is for. So what we've been able to do is essentially create there's something known as Amazon Web Services, which allows you
Mhm.
Amazon Web Services allow you to basically rent a virtual Windows machine for $10 a month or something
Yep.
like that, maybe even less, right? $5 a month. And so what we found actually, what works for us is that instead of having one Facebook Marketplace account where we are marketing 6 of our properties, we get caught within a day,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So they lock your account out and then that account is gone. What we actually do, which has worked really, is that we will turn on, so we'll have 12 different virtual machines for 12 different properties. And what we'll do, and this is where the magic is, let's say property one, we'll turn it on account one, right? And then when that property is filled, when we turn it off on account one, then the next time we don't turn it back on the same account, we turn it back on account two, then on account three. So we rotate the 12 properties amongst the 12 Facebook Marketplace account. And now we get a shit ton of leads, 10,000 tenant leads a year or more without losing Facebook Marketplace. It is by far the most powerful thing for renters, but Facebook specifically says it's not for
Yeah.
apartment people. And anybody that's in the apartment business has been banned and can't market on Facebook Marketplace. But by
Hey.
rotating the properties and not going back and turning them on and off when we need to, we're able to get a shockingly large number of leads, tenant
Yeah.
leads.
Sounds like the way I was doing it on Craigslist when I was wholesaling and I was trying to market a property and I'd have to have the
Yes,
same property, 4 different ads
same
that
idea.
renewed on different. My husband's an IT guy with an AWS certifications and he edits this podcast. So Troy, whatever he just said, implement that with our multifamily business. All right, Neil, how do people get a hold of you? And I always ask, why should people get a hold of you? What kind of person would be best served by getting a hold of you after the show?
I'm obsessed with the idea of taking very complex money making ideas and breaking them down for people and giving that away entirely for free. So I have no education platform that is a paid platform. I have no subscription. I will never have one. But I have
Me
a
neither.
platform that's entirely free. It's called Multifamily University. So you go there and each year you get 8 webinars. These are hour long. Each webinar takes us 300 hours of research and development. They are extraordinarily good looking. It takes us 40 hours just to build the slides. And we do 8 of those webinars. The next one that's coming up, I think, is on the 26th of September, and it is Airbnb. So it's about short term rentals. So I'll do
Mhm.
short term rentals, single family, multifamily, and then I'll do other asset classes like self storage. And then I do one where I basically rank cities in the US. So this is given away for free. 25,000 people a year watch it. And only 1% of those become investors with me. And that's my game, right? 1% are like, I like this geeky, nerdy guy that knows how to break it down, and I'm going to go invest with him. And the remaining 99% just come and get this stuff for free every year. So join us at Multifamily University.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. And this is basically what we do on our multifamily side. We do our hard money loans in house, but then we occasionally will bring an equity investment to our investors with trusted sponsors that we're just like a minor partner on, or just our fund will LP into. And so vetting out operators and figuring out who's really good at what they do. And like you said, you have to be passionate about something to do it long term. Like I always hear every time I hear you speak, I always hear it in your voice, like how much you love spending 300 hours researching a webinar, and it shows. So check out our investor portal. You may see one of Neil's deals on there eventually when we are ready to offer another equity deal. We do them periodically. If you want to get on my calendar, investwithemma.com. Head over to Multifamily University and Neal Bawa, Nealbawa. Thank you so much, Neil, for coming on. Lots of knowledge bombs there. I would love to interview you again in a year or so, catch up on how you're doing on your 5-year exit plan and see what new insights you have into the market. Because, man, it's been rough this last couple of years.
It always evens out.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you so much. Until next time, let us know, reach out, tell us about your passive income adventure dreams, and we'll help you figure out how to get there.